Hey, I have a great show for you today. I'm talking with Liz Chaipraditkul about Witch, her RPG, how she got started in design, and some of the successes and some of the pitfalls she's had. Hello, everybody. This is Patrick Stevens back with the Tabletop Designer Show. This week, I'm joined with Liz Chaipraditkul, and she is the designer on Witch, a successful RPG that funded on Kickstarter earlier this year. Hi, Liz. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So the point of the show is we really just want to talk to designers that we're going to have at the Tabletop Design Summit coming up early next year, and just kind of get some information on how they started in design and some of the successes they've had and some of the pitfalls, just to give some of our independent designers out there some inspiration and maybe some motivation. So how did you get into design? What was that story?
Well, if you ask my mom, she'll say that I've always been designing games and board games. Apparently, when I was a kid, I would come to her with like these, sort of cockamamie board games that I wanted her to play. I was always into gaming and make pretend, and then when I found out about role-playing games, I was like, this is fantastic. And yeah, I was just actually someone who played games for a lot of years. I always was the DM. That happens to a lot of people. Once you volunteer once for being the DM, you are the DM forever.
I'm stuck there right now. So
Yeah, you can't get out. Someone may volunteer to play, to run a game for you, but it only lasts like one session. Then you continue being the DM, GM. But yeah, I think it came from the place that it comes from with a lot of people, which is basically the fact that you love a lot of different games, but they don't have exactly what you want. Which originally is what had started me on Witch, because I was always kind of unhappy with magic systems in different role play games. I loved all of them, but I just wondered, well, why can't we have a little bit of D&D with a little bit of what White Wolf does, and pick apart from different systems. So that's basically what started me.
that's awesome. Yeah, so I DM as well, and I thought the same thing, but instead I just go, it's too much work, and I go and buy a published adventure somewhere. So
I mean,
that's
I guess you have to make that extra leap, but it's definitely worth it. You know what I mean? And if you really have an idea that you want to share with people, then it's something to invest time into.
that's awesome. So when you decided that you were going to do it, what were some of maybe the successes you had at the beginning, or maybe some of the pitfalls you had?
Well, I think the biggest success we had with which was the ability to build kind of a community around it. I'm interested in people though, so maybe that helped a bit. But when you're running a Kickstarter, because that's how we funded Witch through a Kickstarter, it's really, really important that you engage your audience and you get to know people, because those people, if you can make genuine connections with them and relationships with them, they're really going to help promote your work, because they're not only going to like what you've created, which is probably what initially will interest them, but they're going to like you as well. So they're going to be like, hey, Liz has this cool Kickstarter. Why don't you check it out? So for me, that was a pleasant surprise that I was able to meet so many cool people and really get the word out there about my game system. And I think if
So
I look back at it, it was the biggest success. Yes, sir.
okay, so no, so that's cool. So how did you go about that? Was it a mixture of going to cons, going online? I mean, how did you go about doing that as far as building a community around which?
Well, I have well, I'm not, it's not unfortunate. I live in the Netherlands, so I'm very far away from my main target audience, which is in the States, mainly because the community is so big there. Like, I love as many European players as possible, but America is a huge market. So it was a lot of just following people on Twitter. Also, I watch a lot of podcasts and I read a lot of blogs. So it was actually just writing letters to these podcasts, like One Shot Podcast, for example, plug them a bit. I wrote them like, hey, I always listen to you guys. Do you want to check out my roleplay system? And luckily someone wrote back, and we had sent out a lot of marketing packages as well. We sent out like 40 or 50 marketing packages, and we were very lucky that people were kind enough to read through our work and either the community is very welcoming and say like, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have time for it, or like, oh yeah, this is cool, let's do something with it. So yeah, just stalking the people that you've always looked up to, basically.
But okay, but stalking them, but instead of just following them, because a lot of people go on Twitter and follow. Instead of just doing that, you actually reached out to those people and made a personal connection with them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's so important because I mean, tell someone, I think to people in our community, because role play isn't that big, telling someone like, "Hey, I think your work's awesome. I'm kind of doing the same thing." That means so much to them. And a lot of people are really willing to talk to you about it. And even if they're not going to do anything with your work, they'll give you tips, they'll give you resources, and that's just so important.
Okay, and then that's great. So we have a lot of people in the audience that are fledgling designers. They're in the same boat that you were in when you first started writing, which I'm sure, where they wanted to create something because it was filling a gap that they thought was out there. They wanted some certain mechanic or some kind of magic that wasn't a part of a system already. So for those designers, did you go through any pitfalls in the design? Was there any days that you were just like, I can't do this anymore? Or, how about that? Like, was there any struggles for you?
Definitely. I mean, when you're going through the creative process, I think, especially if you're doing it alone, I wrote Witch by myself, and I think a lot of people are in the same boat there. Um, you think like, is this worth it? You know what I mean? There's a lot of self-doubt. Obviously that's a pitfall, but I think that's with a lot of things. But also one thing that I experienced and one kind of issue that I had to kind of get over is trying to make your role play system something for everybody. um, because at one point you need to realize, what type of system you're creating, and that's probably awesome and beautiful and its own thing. But you don't have to be Wizards of the Coast. You're not. No one expects your role play system to fit everybody, and that was really difficult at the start because I was getting feedback from playtesters, and they're like, "Yeah, but why don't you add some kind of point buy system in for the magic?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, okay, I have to do that." And every bit of feedback I would get, I would think I'd have to change my system. And at one point, you have to sit yourself down and realize, no, like this is how it's meant to be. And actually people are giving suggestions because they want to be helpful, but not everything is going to fit the game that you're creating.
That makes sense. So, instead of trying to make a game that will make, one small piece will make a whole bunch of people happy, what you're saying is it's probably better to make a game that's going to make you happy and your core group of people that are going to love that game so much.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, stay genuine to what your game is. Of course, you should definitely take feedback because that is another invaluable thing. But I mean, you should stay honest to your game. And you shouldn't try to turn it into something it's not, so that you can hope to gain two extra fans or something like that. Like you said, like, those people aren't probably going to be worth as much as one person who just loves your game and will tell all their friends and make them love it too. So stick to the soul of your game.
That's great advice. So, all right, was there any point? Last question. Sorry. Was there any point in the actual design process that you had a Yahoo moment, that you were like, I finally I hit a breakthrough, where you at a wall and then, you were able to push through it. Was there any moment like that in the design process that you can remember?
I think when I oh, that's a good that's a good question. Um, I think there were a couple. I think when I originally when I designed the power system for Witch, actually this is a good one. I had envisioned an idea that you would have something like spell slots like D&D, or that you would have a certain mana pool, kind of in the direction of World of Darkness. With every power you can cast something 10 times, or you only can do it 10 times. And for me, I was okay, this kind of works. And then there was a moment where we were playing, and I was just like, yeah, but I want to be able to do this as much as possible. I don't really care what the risk is. Why can't I do that? And that's when we thought of the botching system for Witch. So basically, in Witch you can cast magic as much as you want. The only downfall is that each time you cast your magic, you raise your botch chance. And for me, that was like the greatest moment ever, because the system became what I wanted it to become. And that only came through play testing, and everything else then in the system fell into place. So that was really great.
That's awesome. All right, Liz. Well, thank you. Where can people find out more about what you're doing and find out more about Which?
If you want to find out more about what I'm doing in my company, you can check out angryhamsterpublishing.com. I'm also pretty active on Twitter, so we're at Angry Hamster RPG.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much again, and I can't wait to see you later next year in the Tabletop Design Summit.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you so much for sticking around. If you can go over to www.tabletoptorch.com, you can sign up and to join our weekly newsletter, and you can get our free 2015 Design and Marketing Rulebook. Thanks.